Hey guys, it's Dasha. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video, which is something a little bit different. So as I talked about in my recent reads, I read Fourth Wing last year and I absolutely hated it. However, I did not want to be another person on the internet making a negative review. After finishing the book, I sat down and I started the script of what is more or less a review of the book. I just got all my thoughts out because despite the fact that Ray and Robin made me read the book, I did not want to read it, I did not plan to read it, but they convinced me because I'm susceptible to peer pressure and they thought it'd be funny to hear my reactions. Despite the fact that they made me read the book and then I talked my feelings through with them, I still had a lot of thoughts. So I was sitting down and I was writing this essentially script for a review, but I didn't quite feel like I wanted to be another person posting a negative review of Fourth Wing. That feels a bit like beating a dead horse at this point. I don't think there's much I can say that hasn't been said yet, right? However, I noticed that when I was writing my review and my thoughts, there were times where I could think of something that I thought was better to replace what was in the book while keeping the general gist and vibe of the book. I know it's a popular book. It's a very easy setting and world to kind of fall into, but having read a ton of fantasy in my life, I think there's just ways it could have been done better. And then I came across this lovely lady's video where she rewrote Lightlark. Now, Lynn D. Jung, I believe is how you pronounce her name, and she is a sci-fi fantasy author, and she makes a lot of writing videos on her channel, but this one specifically was related to Lightlark, and she read the book, she did not like it, so she decided to kind of rewrite it so that it made sense. And that's when the light bulb came on, and I thought, I think instead of giving you a review telling you all the things I didn't like, which I think a lot of you, if you know me at all, could kind of guess what I didn't like about Fourth Wing, I'm going to tell you what I think should have been done better and how it could be fixed. You might be asking, what are my credentials? I am not an author. I'm not a writer. I don't think you need to be one specifically to be able to critique writing, though. I've read a lot of fantasy. I am a big fantasy nerd. I think I'm a good enough writer in general. I just don't know if I'd be able to fully craft a fantasy world, or at the very least write it in an engaging way. But I think I have enough ideas, having read plenty of fantasy, having experienced plenty of fantasy through other mediums, to kind of inject a little bit more structure, logic, and intrigue into the existing plot without changing too much of it. I think there's some really cool bones and like structure of a story and a world and characters that exist. It's not that I want to like overhaul it and just keep like a dragon writing school. I really want to take what's already there and just kind of work with it. And I think it's a fun exercise in kind of pinpointing what it is I did not like about it. So when I sat down to actually write the script for this, I was like, okay, I had a few ideas that I wrote in my initial script that was more for a review. What can I change about this to just really make it a little bit better, but keep the parts that everyone seems to love, right? Because when everyone talks about this series, it's really in relation to the romance, the characters, the world, but not necessarily the overworld and like the politics and the war, just more kind of broadly the dragon writing school and specifically like the college setting. So keeping those great elements that already exist, what can we do to just make it make a bit more sense and make it just a bit more sustainable, I guess, for a longer plot? Because that's one of the main issues, is that a lot of this plot seems to be haphazardly created as the book went along, is kind of the vibe I got. So what can we do to make it actually have some kind of solid foundation so that you can build a really cool series on top of it? And finally, this goes without saying, but there will be spoilers throughout this whole book for Fourth Wing. I've not read Iron Flame, whatever the sequel is yet. I probably don't plan on it, but there will be spoilers for Fourth Wing. So if you haven't read it, I would not recommend it. But if you plan on reading, maybe don't watch this. Let's start by kind of including some things I liked. One of the things I really enjoyed, really is a bit of a stretch, but one of the things I enjoyed was the existence of creatures that kind of aren't supposed to exist. The government knows they exist, but nobody else in the world really knows, except for a couple of people that figure it out. I think with the government knowing it, like, you can always justify that kind of like secrecy, and if you plan it out carefully, it makes for a really, really good twist later on. And it felt like that's what Yarros was trying to do by dropping some subtle hints about the existence of the wyvern, I believe they are, or wyvern, not sure how you'd pronounce that. But there was some not very subtle hints being dropped, but overall I do like those kinds of storylines, right? Where the government or the empire in a given world knows that there's something that is not supposed to exist, but it really does, but it's still hiding it. I think the problem was the way Yarros introduced it made it really, really obvious from like the first chapter that that's what was going to happen. And it's just entirely unpleasant to go into a book where at the beginning you can already guess one of the final twists. I liked the payoff at the end though. This is the section of things I like. So I like the payoff at the end, that the creatures genuinely felt powerful and terrifying, and the characters felt really, really like appalled and scared by them, and I thought that was really well done. I just think it was the way it was set up that kind of gave it a slightly less impactful payoff at the end, but like as a reader, you felt the same terror the characters felt upon realizing that these creatures were real, and I thought that was really cool. And I even think you could have kept that whole, the dad has this like fairy tale book that's supposed to be like a warning about these creatures. The book isn't supposed to exist, right? We find out all these things about the book being kind of forbidden or isn't supposed to have been written. It's not kept in any library or database. So I really liked the inclusion of that. Again, it just felt ham-fisted because it was literally one of the first things introduced, and it felt really out of place. This is when Violet is packing to go over to the Dragon Riders quadrant, and she's literally like packing the one book and having this incredibly unnatural dialogue with her sister about the book, and it felt really, really like just being laid on way too thick, but it is a really good way to introduce that. I think that was smart, it just wasn't well done. Obviously, of course, the general setting of a Dragon Rider school, incredible. Having an enemies to lovers romance inside of it, really, really good too. Like it's a good idea. It makes for really, really high stakes in theory. When you think about it, like the daughter of a war general and the son of the man that the general executed, that's like a perfect setup, of course. And the fact that their dragons are mated to be together, of course, that's great. That's great stuff. And it creates some like really good discussions about the idea of like punishing children for the sins of their parents, right? Tying it back to like the Bible, for God's sake. Like there's really cool potential for discussions. And then talking about, you know, whether it's our biology that makes us who we are or our experiences, whether we are like our parents because of how they raised us or for our own people, and whether, you know, their DNA might be in us, but is it our biology or is it who we choose to be that makes us who we are? I think that'd be really, really cool to have those discussions because of the innate fact of who the two main characters are, right? And finally, of course, I love the fact that the Empire is being shady, right? It's a classic trope in a lot of fantasies that there's this all-knowing evil government or empire or kingdom that knows all these things, that knows all these secrets, but keeps them from its own citizens. It's always the setup for some really, really good reveals and plot twists. However, it has to be well done. You can't explain everything away by, oh, the government was keeping this a secret, but they knew all along. You have to make it make sense. And here is where my quest begins to make Fourth Wing make sense. My main gripe, and one of the first things I started rewriting, was the magic system. I think it is stupid. It feels incredibly contrived and not intuitive at all. And obviously magic is magic, right? The problem is you cannot have it both ways. You can't have a magic system that has some sort of rigid structure, like people get specific powers, and at the same time explain away any illogical pitfalls by saying, well, it's just magic, like it's not supposed to make sense. You can't have it both ways. Either it's just kind of magic that exists in the world and it's fun and whimsical, or it has some kind of rules. You can't have both, in my opinion. The main thing is that I feel there's just too many powers given to the students. They feel very random, they feel very contrived. It felt like Yarros needed certain things to fit certain scenes or certain plot beats, so it just ended up being convenient that certain characters got things that Yarros really needed them to have. It felt like she needed to write herself out of some tight corners, and I find that incredibly lazy, and I think there are two ways you could fix this. There's two routes you could take to make this make a bit more sense while also keeping the main elements, which is the bond with the dragons and the different powers. So the first option that I think would make a lot of sense is that everyone's powers manifest at a young age. That way people would be able to be sent where they are the most useful. So if there's some that are more suited for the military, they can be sent to the military academy, but maybe there's some that are better suited for teaching or for bookkeeping or for farming. right? And so maybe there wouldn't be a need to just send a bunch of kids off to military school and have them all be fighting for spots at the Dragon Academy when their powers might be better used towards other things. The reason I thought of it this way was because there's a teacher in the Dragon Rider Academy. I don't want to butcher the name. I'd feel like that would be disrespectful of me. I am not Rebecca Yarros, so I'm not going to say the academy's name. But in the school, there is one of their teachers who has their power as projection. Images that they have seen with their eyes, they can project to a classroom. And to me, that felt so fucking stupid because that felt like an incredible waste. You mean this person went through military academy, got bonded with a dragon, which is a bond for the rider's life. So now there's a dragon being taken away and they're stuck at the academy teaching dragon class. To me, it would make a lot more sense that someone like this would just be placed in maybe a regular school or have some other role beyond being put through this entire dragon training academy, waste finite resources, which are the dragons, and then just be stuck teaching. It's a bit odd. This person's not going to be incredibly useful in battle. The whole point of the dragons is that they can be ridden into battle. That part made no sense to me. And that's what got me thinking that it would make more sense if we were told or shown somehow that children manifested powers at a young age. Maybe not everyone gets them, but you would be able to see some things pop up at a younger age, and then that would determine what you study, what you work as, where your strengths lie, basically. And then it would kind of help cull the people at the academy to really just the most crucial, most important people. Because if dragons amplify your power, you want people who already have really interesting and important powers for warfare, if you're taking the dragons into battle with you, and then you could maybe use them and just basically hone them into a better weapon with the help of the dragons. But people whose strengths lie in other shit, like the girl whose power is to like make objects disappear and reappear into her hand. Like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know. It's so nonsensical. I'm gonna get myself worked up, so I'm gonna get back to the script. But anyways, that's where this idea started, right? Was the projection. I was like, this feels really like a waste of everyone's resources to put him through Dragon Rider School just for him to be a teacher. The other thing that got me on this train was that there was one student who developed like mind reading abilities, and he got immediately killed when his power manifested. And to me, that's just like, that feels like such a waste, because again, this person has spent, I don't know, 6 to 8 months in the school. I don't know, the timelines are really weird in this book, but this person's already spent time at the school being educated. They passed a lot of the tests to get through the school. And I understand that it was meant to show how dangerous the school is and how like unpredictable it is and the, you know, high stakes and all that, but it felt incredibly wasteful. And if there's one thing militaries are not supposed to be, it's inefficient, right? You're not going to train someone just to kill them off yourself. So that's what got me thinking, right? Like, if you knew at a young age that you had mind reading abilities, you would maybe know that if it's that dangerous, you could try to hide them. So maybe you still have a shot at leading a normal life. You just wouldn't go to the military academy, fair enough. But you could still go to the infantry and, you know, live a different way, but at least it wouldn't be the military wasting you away. And then it would create an additional layer to the world, right? And this is where it would actually add a little bit of lived-inness to the world, right? You know, there's some books where you're reading and you close the book and it feels like the world keeps going without you. I love stories like that. To me, those are the most compelling because it feels like the world is lived in. It feels like people exist within it. You're just looking at a small little window, but the world is there all around. The problem with Fourth Wing is that didn't feel like that. I feel like if you gave this added layer of powers manifesting at a young age, there could be a lot of things you could do with that for the world. Think about it. It's going to create a power struggle within different sects of the world, right? Because people are going to be vying for people with different abilities, all trying to get the ones that are the strongest. So Violet's brother, for example, is a healer. He's a particularly strong healer. So of course, you know, naturally some medical field would want him, but then the military could be kind of fighting to try to get him so he could be a medic on the field. So there'd be a little bit of like power struggles and politics within the world. And we'd be able to get an understanding of how the world works beyond just like, here's the military college in a bubble and everything else is out there. The second way I think powers could have manifested in this world that would make a bit more sense to me would be more akin to something that we see in the Witcher series. For those of you who have read the books or played the games, you might know what I'm talking about, but for those who don't, I will explain. Basically, the world of The Witcher has innate magic. It is just imbued with magic within it, but in order to harness it, you have to learn, and that education comes at a cost. So witches and mages in the world of The Witcher have to give up a lot in order to become magic wielders. They become some of the most powerful people, if not the most powerful people in this entire world, but they are infertile, and it's very hard for them to make friendships and relationships because they're kind of seen as these very, very powerful people, kind of separate from the rest of the world. Everyone wants something from you, right? These people can make themselves incredibly beautiful. They're in court and they get, you know, gifts bestowed upon them, and they get to be advisors to kings and emperors, but they are incredibly lonely people because everyone just wants something from them. Everyone wants them to fix their problems. And again, they're literally infertile, and they have to go through very difficult training to become witches or mages. And because of this cost, it feels like it's not going to be just anyone that can become a witch or a mage. You have to be ready to take on that challenge. And I understand that that was kind of the goal of making the school very dangerous. Anyone can kill you at any point, but the problem is that wasn't really felt because it felt like there was then all these exceptions to when people could kill you, and then like the school was, you know, the school's supposed to be super, super dangerous, but someone like Violet can kind of just squeak by because she gets lucky, right? So in this case, here's where the bond with the dragon would come in as your cost, right? Because we know one of the sayings in this world is a dragon without its rider is, I think, screwed, but a rider without his dragon is dead. And so here you can, you know, you choose to sign up for this, you choose to do this, but it comes at the cost of the dragon because you use the dragon to channel those abilities. You learn alongside the dragon, you become a magic wielder, but you cannot push yourself too much. You can't push the dragon too much because you will risk harming the dragon, which would be harming yourself or killing it and then killing yourself. And again, what you can actually do at the school would then depend on your dragon strength, your willpower, your natural abilities. It feels like there's a little bit more of a challenge to the characters rather than, oh, your power is awakened inside you by the dragon that you bond with, but it feels like not everyone's maybe earned that bond with the dragon, and then all of a sudden you guys are bonded for life, right? Like the selection process would make a bit more sense because then the dragon would be able to see within you whether you're going to push them too far and kill them, whether you have that kind of natural ability, or whether you have that sheer strength or will to take on the task of learning the magic. And again, it also helps create this barrier, right? There has to be a cost to wielding magic. If everyone has magic, then why aren't there more people that go to the Dragon Riding Academy? It seems like there's almost no cost. All you have to do is cross the parapet to get in right away on the first day, and then maybe someone will kill you in your sleep, but apparently not because there's a lot of rules around it. I don't know, it feels like there needs to be a bit more of a barrier. The cost needs to be just a little bit higher, and I feel like this way would kind of push it to that level, or at least if it was explained that way, because maybe that was the subtext, but it didn't feel that way at all. The main thing between these two options for the magic in this world is that not everyone has magical abilities. I think that really avoids the problem of like anyone could technically just go to the school, even though there's apparently all these high stakes and it's dangerous, whatever. Not everyone gets in, not everyone gets powers, not everyone has these like random, really convenient powers because Rebecca Yarros just didn't know what to do with certain scenes. Too many weird specific powers was one of my main things, and that's kind of what this first half was about. The second half is about Xaden, because I got issues. I don't want to be another person harping on how it makes no fucking sense, but I will be harping on this because what do you mean the children of rebellion leaders are given the highest honor in the land of possibly becoming dragon riders? All they have to do is survive. What do you fucking mean? No, and here's how we're going to rectify that. So again, we've got two options. I'm giving multiple because I don't know which one I like better, but here's how we're fixing this, right? The main thing between both of those is that the government lies. Going back to that. And they're lying about who has or gets powers. So in the first scenario, we have ethnic minority who are living in the area where the rebellion happened. Or rather, they're the ethnic minority in the land, the broader empire, but in that specific region, they're the majority. Now, this ethnic minority in this empire are the only ones, supposedly, born without magic. Most of them are. They're tired of being discriminated against. They don't get good job opportunities, education opportunities, so they rebel. Because one of my issues with Fourth Wing is I could not tell you right now what the rebellion was about. It kept being mentioned, but we didn't talk about it much, so it seemed like it had no impact beyond setting up Xaden's position in the world. Here you have a purpose, right? The ethnic minority is tired of having their rights stripped simply because they were not born with magic. They have plenty of other skills they can offer, but they keep getting discriminated against, so they have a rebellion. Now, the government spins this to say, well, none of them had magic, they're just lesser than, that's why they rebelled, they didn't know like what else to do, and so we just, we put them down, whatever. But the main fact of the matter is that some of them can be born with magic. They just have to hide it because the government doesn't like it when that specific ethnic group is born with magic. So this creates a trickle-down effect. Because these people are born without magic, for the most part, they are shipped off to be cannon fodder for the military, specifically the children of the rebellion leaders. They're not shipped off to get the highest honor. They're just shipped off to be just infantry. Xaden, however, was young enough when the rebellion happened. We can maybe push the timeline around, He was young enough. He had incredible power. Instead of shipping him off with the rest of the infantry where they knew he would not be able to hide his power, the government decided instead to put him under a false name, false identity, basically place him with a family of a different ethnic group and raise him like a normal child, indoctrinate him and hone his power because they realized he was much more powerful in the right hands than just as cannon fodder. So he kind of grows up hidden, not fully knowing where he is maybe or who he is, but he has incredible power and the military did not want that to go to waste. Boom! Now you have a reason for Xaden to be at the academy, to be incredibly powerful, but to maybe have a bit of a hidden past, perhaps. The other path you could take this, rather than the ethnic minority, is the one where every person who was part of the rebellion and their children had their power stripped. So in this world, everyone's magic, but once you participated in the rebellion, you were killed, your children had their magic powers stripped. Again, that means that they would just be sent off to the infantry for the most part, as not a punishment, you get to live, but you're probably gonna die soon anyways, but we can't really kill kids, so whatever. Xaden, however, managed to not get his powers taken away. He escaped. He went on the run. Now the government says, because the news got out that he ran away, oh yeah, he went on the run, but because he did that, we didn't just take his powers away, we killed him. They did not. He went on the run, he went into hiding, he changed his identity. This is a medieval world. I'm sure there's no advanced IDs. I'm sure no one would figure it out, right? This was a while ago, again, messed with the timelines a little bit. He is gone, and then he comes back later to the school to exact his revenge from the inside. Under a different name, different identity, but he knows exactly who he is. The government said they killed him, and he says, haha, you're gonna wish you did. Wouldn't that create such a cool setup? Because here's the thing, with option one, right, you get the kind of ethnic conflict discrimination. There's going to be a little layer of depth. Not that it's good to sprinkle in ethnic discrimination into a fantasy story, but it's a common theme that comes up, and it's one that could be kind of interestingly explored between magic wielders and non-magic wielders. And it creates a bit of a different discussion than just government bad, all the people good, I guess, which was the point of Fourth Wing. So it kind of just gives it a different layer, adds a little bit of depth. Not that Rebecca Yarros would have maybe handled it correctly, but if I was writing the story, that's maybe one of the directions you could take that would just lend the world a bit more lived-inness. By kind of giving it a few more dimensions, it would feel a bit more lived in. In your option number 2, then you get to set up a storyline of Xaden being hunted later on, right? Someone at some point is going to figure out who he is. He's inside their goddamn military. Someone's going to put 2 and 2 together, and he's going to have to go on the run, and it's going to be really, really high stakes. It's going to be really interesting, and it's going to create a lot of conflict later on between Xaden and Violet. And then together, this new situation, this new reason for Xaden being at the school will in turn improve the romance. But how, you might be asking? Well, Xaden's not supposed to be there, so when Violet crosses the parapet and she sees him, she kind of recognizes him, but she's not sure from where. He's like nagging at the back of her brain. Instead of in the book where it's this like immediate dislike that just felt very juvenile to me, there's kind of this like feeling of like attraction and like maybe recognition, but also, depending on which scenario this is, Xaden might know who she is and feel immense dislike and hatred towards her, versus maybe he just finds her attractive but kind of distrusts her, maybe knows, you know, who she is, and even though he might not have full recollections of who he is, if we're taking the first scenario where he's quite young and the government took him, you know, there's still a little something there's that like dipping the toes, the back and forth. And in either scenario, right, because he can't blow his cover, he might not know who he is, there's not that immediate outwards hostility, which could create an opportunity for some like secretive moments. Maybe, you know, it's a bit more of a slow burn. They bump into each other a couple times and he's just really mean towards her and she has no idea why. Or, you know, assumes that it's because of her mother and who her mother is, but not specifically because her mother did anything to Xaden. Whereas, you know, in the second scenario, he would know exactly who the fuck she is, but he can't say anything because he would blow his cover. So it kind of creates a little bit of, you know, a little bit of subtlety, a little back and forth. Something's going to start nagging at Violet. She's going to be like, who is this man who seems to dislike me, distrust me? I've done nothing to him. Then, you know, the book would kind of continue as normal, the slow burn. Violet's slowly figuring out that she's being lied to by the government. You know, they have their battle brief class where they're being told about certain events in the war that are happening, but not others. She's continuing to have these doubts, right, about the government and whether they've been honest with her. And then at some point you can have some kind of, you know, revelation between them. Maybe she catches him talking to someone. Maybe she gets to know him a little bit and he slips up. Maybe they're drunk on one of the balls or whatever, and he reveals something about his family and she puts two and two together, right? Because Violet's supposed to be smart. She was continuously pushed onto us as this super smart girl, but really she's fucking stupid. And this would give her an opportunity to prove how smart she is by slowly piecing the tiniest clues together and being like, I know who the fuck you are. And that creates a bond between them that we do not see in the normal book, the original book, as it was intended to be read, right? This secret creates leverage on her part against him, but she knows that she needs him to figure out what's happening because her curiosity, her desire to find out what is hiding in the government's bowels, what the government is hiding from the people. She knows she needs him to figure that out, to uncover the truth, because she cannot stand not knowing, right? Despite the fact that he's a rebellion leader, he had something to do with the death of her father and her brother, who's, you know, not dead after all, but she thinks, right? So there's all these these secrets between them, this hatred, but they need each other. If he pushes her away, if he hurts her too badly, there will be questions. If he kills her, there will be questions. If he hurts her too badly, she could go expose him. So he needs to keep her a little bit on his good side. Now, if she pushes him away, she won't find out the truth. She won't know what her dad was researching. She won't know what happened to her brother. Maybe he knows and can tell her a little bit right off the bat rather than have it be a cheap plot twist. But, you know, there's going to be a bit more of a symbiotic relationship because the entire book as it is now felt like it was just entirely founded on raging hormones that people their age probably shouldn't have at that point because I think they're supposed to be in their early 20s. I felt like their entire relationship was found on raging hormones, and I feel like if you're going to give me enemies to lovers, there should be like betrayals and secrets and all these like really, really intense things, but something's keeping them together. And obviously there's the bond of their dragons, but you need a little bit more. And I feel like having Xaden have this secret identity that Violet only discovers because she is so intelligent and using her wits would draw them very close together and give them a purpose to seeing each other a bit more beyond, oh my god, he's so hot. And like, yes, you could probably argue that there was a bond built on secrets in the real book, right? Violet spied on Xaden meeting with some of his rebellion friends, and I guess that was like a secret, but it's a secret that could have gotten multiple people killed, right? Violet's not going to want to be responsible for multiple people, but if it was just one person, like, it's a little bit different, right? So I feel like by having it be fully for Xaden, right? Like that secret was not kept out of service for Xaden. Having just her and Xaden know something about each other and have those kind of secrets being shared would create a really, really strong bond that would make me believe a bit more in their relationship. And there you have it. I think the rest you could keep. Like, I don't like the writing in this book, I don't like the dialogue, but I feel like just a couple of changes like that, and you know, there's a lot of those changes that have the nuggets existing within the world that you could just rewrite a little bit, and I feel like they would just help make this feel so much more cohesive and 3-4 dimensional rather than very 2-dimensional, which is how the book felt to me. And again, I am no writer, but this was just where my brain went when I thought, how could I improve this beyond just fully rewriting it? And I think just tweaking a few of the magic and world and political elements could give this book so much more scope and depth and breadth, and it'd be just so much more interesting to sink your teeth into. I personally would, you know, like smaller changes, I'd make the atmosphere like darker. I'd make the scenes darker. It felt like a lot of things happened like outside in the sun, and like it was all like lighthearted fun. They were at like the cafeteria. Like, no, I want it like dark. I want it dingy. I don't want it to feel like high stakes. I want it to be high stakes. I didn't get that. I also feel like the plot had to be a little bit slower. I want it more like syrup. I want it to be the slow drip. The Xaden and Violet relationship has to be slower. It has to be much less like sexual tension-y. Like, that was just so annoying. But I feel like there could be really good sexual tension if it's built up properly, not just, oh, he's so hot. He's so hot. Oh my God. You know, you need a bit less moon eyes between them and maybe a bit more like scene setting and atmosphere. But beyond that, like there's such good, interesting ideas at the core here, but I feel like the execution was just so poor. So this was a fun exercise in creativity. I don't know, if you've ever thought about how you would rewrite Fourth Wing, let me know. If there's things that maybe, you know, if there's one thing you could just tweak about the actual plot or about a character or the magic or the world, let me know. This is just fun to think about. I don't know what the point of this beyond just, yeah, fun exercise, but it's also good to know, like, you know, pulling apart a book and thinking, what do I really like and what do I not like and what would be improved, right? Because that also helps me figure out what I like in books. It helps me pick out, okay, well, I really hated the book, but why, right? Yeah, cringy dialogue, bad writing, but like there's got to be other things, and what do I enjoy and how can those elements have been slightly shifted and turned to make it into a product that I would put my money into. So this has been fun. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And like I said, if there's one specific thing you would change about Fourth Wing, also feel free to spoil Iron Flame for me. I really don't care. I'm probably not going to read it. But yeah, if you have something, if you have thoughts on what you would change, let me know. Otherwise, my social media is linked down below. You guys can always come talk to me there, and I will see you in the next one. Oh, fuck. I hit my coffee table. Bye.